All right. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to be working on the first chapter, or the first section in chapter 2 today. All right, so you guys got notebook paper, everybody got something to write with here? All right, so 2.1 is what we're going to be talking about. Everything that we do in this chapter is going to deal with organizing data. All right, so just want to show you this. I mean, obviously, you can write this down, but I just want you to kind of think about something for me for just a second. All right, so if you do some research and you come up with a data set, so you come up with a list of numbers like something like what you see on the screen. And then someone asks you to answer some questions about your data set, right? Like they might ask you, well, what conclusions can you draw? Or what trends do you see? Do you see any patterns with the data? Okay, that sort of thing. It is very difficult to answer questions when you just have a list of numbers. Okay, does that make sense? So you have to be able to have some ways to organize the data so that you can look at it and then draw those conclusions, okay, or make those predictions. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do we organize this data. All right, so the way that we're going to work on today, all right, is what's called a frequency distribution. All right, so let's write down the word frequency distribution as a way to organize data. All right, and a frequency distribution is just a chart. It's going to have columns. We're going to put some information underneath each column. Okay, so there are two types. We're going to work on both of these types today. Okay, so there is what's called a categorical frequency distribution. All right, leave yourself a couple of lines, put some information in there. And then there's also what's called a grouped frequency distribution. All right, so that's our goal today, is that when you leave, you'll be able to construct both of those charts. All right, so there's just a few things for each one that we need to know. All right, so the first thing is when to use them. So sometimes our data set can look like what we have on the screen, where it's a set of numbers. And other times it can be a set of words. Like if I were to go around the room and ask you what your favorite subject was, okay, then you're going to give me something, you're going to give me a list of words, right? Okay, and so if the answers to the question, if the data is not numbers, it's going to be a categorical frequency distribution. Okay, so I'm going to put this right here. So we're going to use this if the data is not numbers. And then if the data is numbers, like what we've got on the screen, we're going to be doing a grouped one. Okay, so that's hopefully an easy distinction. Like when you look at it, you're going to say, oh, it's numbers, I'm going to do a group. Oh, it's not numbers, I'm going to do a categorical. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to know. All right, the second thing you need to know is if we're going to make a chart out of this thing, we're going to have column headings. All right, so that's the other thing I want you to write down. So for categorical, you're going to do a column for class. That's going to be the heading. We're going to do a column for frequency. And then another one for percent. So it's going to get 3 columns. Headings are going to be class, frequency, and percent. All right, and then on the grouped one for the numbers, it's similar. We're going to do columns for class, we're going to do a column for class boundaries. We're going to do a column for frequency. And we're going to do a column for cumulative frequency. All right, so that's kind of our base information. Like if we can remember that, then we should be able to set this thing up without any real difficulty. Okay, we got to remember which one goes with which type of data, and then we've got to remember what columns go in each particular type. All right, so we're going to look at an example of each one. All right, so we're going to start with the categorical one. All right, so I don't know how we want to do the data set. I really don't think you need to copy it down, but if you're concerned about it, you're welcome to grab your phone and take a picture of the screen if that's helpful to you. If you don't need it, that's fine too. I don't necessarily know that you need it, but if you think you're going to go back and look at it and maybe work on it some more, you might want a copy of the data set. Okay, up to you. All right, so it says, at a pizza restaurant, an interviewer asked 30 people to name their favorite pizza toppings. All right, and we have what they said down here. And we want to construct a frequency distribution for the data. All right, so what type of frequency distribution am I going to do? Categorical. Okay, not numbers, so categorical, right? All right, so when I set it up, what are my columns going to look like? I'm going to have a column for class. What else? Frequency, which I'm just going to abbreviate with an F. And percent, which I'm going to put the percent symbol. Okay. All right, now this one of the two, this one's pretty easy, okay? So for classes, anybody have a thought as to what you're going to put? What do you think? Pizza toppings, yeah. So we're going to go through and we're going to put any pizza topping that is in my data set. Okay, if I have a topping that's not in the data set, I'm not going to put it down. All right, so I'm just going to kind of glance through. It doesn't matter what order you put it in. So one thing that I see is pepperoni. Okay, what else do we have? Sausage. Okay. Mushrooms. And olives. And onions. And I think that gets it, right? So just make a list of the things that are in your data set. Okay, what do you think frequency is going to tell me to do?
How many times have we said?
Good. How many times those are in the set? All right, so we're basically going to count. All right, so I'm going to go through my set. Now, if you're working from a piece of paper, what I would suggest that you do is that you mark off these things as you go. Okay, so like when I count pepperoni, I'm gonna cross through it so that I don't make a mistake and forget something. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, does that look like all of them? Okay, so I'm gonna put a 12 in the frequency column. All right, now I'm gonna move on and count the sausage.
Okay, is it also to let you put tally marks instead of the numbers or no?
You can add a tally column if you want, but then you need to make a frequency column with the actual number.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so sausage, let's see. 1, 2, 3. All right, so I'm gonna put the 3 there. Okay, what about mushrooms? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6.
Yep, 6, thank you, 6. Okay. Olives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then onions, 1, 2,
3 is on the
3 on the bottom, thank you. All right, so now, when we get that done, the best way for me to check if I mark everything off is just to say, okay, let me make sure that everything's crossed off, okay? The thing about this is it's really easy. I mean, right, this is pretty easy. You don't want to make a mistake and lose points because you missed one by mistake, okay? So just double check and make sure that you got everything counted. All right, the other way to sort of check yourself is to add up your frequency column. All right, so if I add those 5 numbers together, let's see, that's going to give me 12, 18, 30. Okay. And then I can come back over here and sort of check that against my data set. I can say that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going across. 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, and that gives me a way to check and make sure that I've got the right number. All right. All right, so percents. All right, so percents. All right. So kind of an easy definition for a percent is that it is the part over the whole. Okay, and then we multiply by 100, which changes that decimal to a percent value. All right, so what that means for me, if I'm going to do a percent for pepperoni, the part is going to be 12, because that's how many I had here, right? The whole is going to be 30, because that's the total number. And then I'm going to multiply by 100. Okay, so part being the 12, because there are 12 pepperonis, 30 being the whole, because there are 30 altogether, and then we're going to multiply by 100. All right, so that should give you 40%. All right, so what do I type in my calculator? It's okay. What do I type in my calculator for sausage? Yeah, so we'll do 3 for sausage, right? Divided by 30 times 100. Everybody okay with that? 3 divided by 30 times 100. All right, so that should give me 10%. Okay, and then I also have the same number for onions, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. Okay, and then what about mushrooms? What does that calculation look like? I'm going to type in my calculator.
6 over 30 times 100.
Yeah, 6 over 30 times 100. That's going to give me 20%. All right, so how can I check my percents to basically know that I've got those right? Anybody know a way to check that?
I don't know.
Add them up. If I add them up, they should equal what? 100. If they don't, they ought to be really, really close, okay? Because we might have some rounding going on. If they're not even close, then we've got a mistake. Okay. All right, so now this is our frequency distribution, what we've got right here with the chart. So if I come in and I were to ask you a question like, what's the most popular pizza topping? You can very quickly tell me what? Pepperoni, because it has the highest frequency or it has the biggest percent, okay? So we can answer questions like that from the chart a lot faster than we can answer it from looking at a data set. All right, any questions? Any questions from you guys? Easy enough? All right, those of you at home, anybody need to ask a question? You can either put it in chat or unmute yourself and ask the question. Anything that you need to ask on that one? Okay, all right, so let's move on and look at the other one. Okay, so again, if you want to take a picture of the data set, feel free to do that. Those of you in class, if you want to grab your cameras off your phone and take a picture, I'm going to get out of the way so you can do that if that's easier for you. All right, so our data is numbers. So we're going to do the grouped frequency distribution. This one is a little more work. It can be a little bit more difficult than, say, the categorical one was. All right. So a couple of things that I need to do before I get started with the actual chart. All right, so the first thing that I need to do, I'm trying to make some notes as I go, is to find what is called the range. Okay. So the range is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the highest number to the lowest number. So we're going to subtract those two. All right, so range is the highest minus the lowest. It is so important that when you look at your data set and you pick out the highest and the lowest, that you don't make a mistake. Because everything that you're going to do setting up this chart bases itself on you picking the highest and the lowest values. So if you make a mistake, then the entire thing ends up being wrong. Okay. All right, so let's find in our data set our highest number and our lowest number. So what is the highest number that we see?
134.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to circle the 134. Does anybody see anything bigger than 134? Okay, I think that's it. All right, so 134 is the highest. Okay. And then for the lowest,
100.
100. Good, thank you. All right, and I don't see anything lower than 100. All right, so I'm going to subtract those two numbers, and that's going to give me 34 for the range. Okay, which means that this particular data set spans a possible 34 numbers. Okay. All right, the second thing I need to do is I need to find what is called the class width. All right, so the class width is found by taking your range and dividing by the number of classes. So what we're doing here is we're saying to ourselves, we should have 34 numbers spanned from beginning to end. That's our range. We want to cut it up into equal classes, and all of the classes need to be the same size. So to figure out the size, we're going to take the 34 and just divide by the number of classes that we want. All right, so my range is 34. They should tell you the number of classes. I put it right up here, okay? But wherever you're at in the problem, you shouldn't have to decide how many classes. They should be telling you, okay? So 7 classes for this.
It'll be 50 for the number of classes.
It's gonna be whatever they tell you. So like on this one, you see here how it says you use 7 classes?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so whatever they tell you, they'll always tell you what that's gonna be. All right, so when I put this in my calculator, I get 4.86 when I round it. Now, the problem here is I don't want to set up a class that has a decimal value. Like, it just makes it too hard for me. Okay, I'd rather use a whole number. So we are definitely going to do some rounding on this decimal value. Okay? So the
round
rule
every time,
do what?
if we have to round,
We're going to round, yes. So the rule here is that you are going to round this up. Okay?
always? or-
Always.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna round it up. And the best scenario is that you round it up to the next odd number. Okay, so I'm gonna write that down. Round up to the next odd number. Now, you do not have to round it up to the next odd number, but you do have to round it up to the next number. Okay, so I'm just gonna maybe stick that in parentheses. Odd is better. Okay, I would like for you to do odd, but it's not an absolute must. But you do have to round it up to the next number. So 4.86 would round up to 5, and 5 is odd, so we're good, right? Okay. All right, so let me ask you this question then. All right, so we know that that's gonna go to 5. All right, so let me ask you, if instead of that 4.86, what if I had gotten, what if instead of that, I had gotten 4.01? Would I still round it to 5?
It'll be 4.
Okay. Yeah, actually not, okay? We want to round it up every time. So this is one of those rules. Remember we said the other day, there are some places in statistics where we do things that we would not do in other math classes. This is one of those things. In another math class, yes, that would round to 4. In statistics, in this particular case, because we're rounding up, it's still going to round to 5. Okay? Always going to go up. And the reason why is because if you do 7 classes and they each have 4 numbers, 7 times 4 is what? 28. We needed the thing to span 35. So if we only do 7 classes of 4, we're not far enough along. If we do 7 classes that have a width of 5, what's 7 times 5? 35, we've made it. Okay, so we don't want to short ourselves, and that's the reason that we always need to round this thing up.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes,
When we put in our answer, would you take 4.86 or you would have to round it up?
you're gonna have to round it up because of what you're fixing to do with it.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. Everybody okay with that? So if you get a decimal at all, you're gonna bump it up to the next number.
So we have 2.01, it'll be 3.
Yes.
Okay.
2.01 is gonna be 3. Okay. All right, anybody at home with a question there? Okay, so let me ask you this question real quick then. What if it had been, 13.42? Where are you gonna bump it?
14.
Okay, you would bump it to 14, right? And then it is perfectly acceptable to bump it to 15. Why am I saying that?
I know.
Odd number, okay? You can use the 14, but it's easier, honestly, with where we're going to go ahead and bump it to the odd.
So I always have an odd number.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what we can do for our chart. All right, so I'm gonna erase a little bit. I'm gonna write up here what we got. We found the range to be 34. And then we found width of 5. All right. Okay, so let's some space here. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our chart. So we were supposed to have columns for class boundaries, right? Frequency and cumulative frequency. Right, so go ahead and set that up across the top. All right, F for frequency, CF for cumulative frequency. You can abbreviate that way. Okay, so your first class, we're going to start with the lowest value in the data set. So that's going to be 100. Okay, and remember that we want this class to have a width of 5. So normally what students do, if I ask them, hey, what do you think we're going to do? They'll say that we'll take that width and add it to 100. So 105. And then they'll do this. And they'll say, okay, I have the first class done. My problem with that is that that class does not have a width of 5. All right, so think about it. If I think about the numbers inside that class, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105. All right, I'll write it down for the people at home. All right, so if I look at the numbers in that class, there are 6 numbers, and we said that we wanted the width to be 5.
So
Okay.
100 to 104.
Yes, so I just made a mistake in putting that 105 where I put it. So what I recommend to students is that you put that 105 that you just got underneath, because it's actually the start of the next class. Okay? And that you work completely down the left-hand side of this column first before you worry about what's on the other side. All right, so I'm going to add 5 every time. So 100 plus 5 is 105. Plus 5 again, 110. Plus 5 again, 115, 120, 125, 130. And I'm going to do 7 of them, right? Because it told me to do 7 classes.
Okay, so you add 5 going down, not across.
Right, add 5 going down. And why am I adding 5?
Because the width is 5.
Because the width is 5. Okay, so start with your lowest value, add your width, add your width, add your width, but just remember to come down when you do it and not across.
Okay, so start with our lowest number.
Start with your lowest number.
Okay.
All right, so start with your lowest number, add your width, add your width, add your width, come all the way down. Okay, once that's done, then go back and fill in the other side of that column. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say to myself. If the second class starts at 105, then the one above it ended at 104, right? Okay. And my third class starts at 110. So what does that mean about the second class?
Started at 109.
109. Okay, because we kind of have this continuous progression through the numbers. So 100 to 104, then we pick up at 105 and go to 109. Then we pick up at 110 and we go to what?
114.
Good, 114.
115 and 119.
Right, good, 115, 119, good.
Then 124.
Then 124, all right, you guys with me? Is everybody understanding what we're doing here?
And then 125, 125.
Good, 129, okay, and then the last one, sometimes we get a little bit stuck because we don't have anything to look at, all right? So what you could do is add an extra class on the end if you wanted to. We'll erase it later, but remember how we did it, 100, 105, 110, 150, 120, 125, 130, the next one would have been 135, right?
So
Then
then
that'd be
Right, and then this would be 134, and then I'll get rid of that.
that side over there still. So it still got to be equal with the width, right?
Okay, so this one is a little bit unique in that we started with the lowest and we ended with the highest. Normally, we go over the highest, and that's fine. But the idea is that you want all of your classes to be the same size. So even if the last class ends up being a little bit too big, so be it, doesn't matter. Okay, but we want all the classes to stay the same width as we go down. All right, that's the hardest part, yes.
How we know when to stop? Like, I know we stopped at 130.
7 classes, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. Okay. All right, anything else you guys need to ask? Okay. All right, so let's see if we can finish it up. All right, so boundaries. Remember we talked last time we met about the scale and how, like, if someone steps on the scale and it reads 120, it could be a little bit less and a little bit more. You guys remember doing that? Okay. So that's the idea here with the boundaries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these edge numbers, and I'm going to go a little bit less than the bottom ones and a little bit more than the top ones. All right. So what number is a little bit smaller than 100? Remember, it's got to end in a 0.5, right? So what would be a little bit smaller than 100 and ending in a 0.5? 99.5. Okay, I'm still gonna, I think, work my way down. So what's a little bit smaller than 105?
104.5.
104.5. All right, what about a little bit smaller than 110?
Wait, I'm confused now. So, why you went down by?
Well, I figured it might be easier for us all to do all the ones that are a little bit smaller first, and then we'll go back and work on the other ones. So we want to go a little bit less than those first numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so what's a little bit less than 110?
109.
109, and it has to end in a 0.5, so 109.5. Okay, what's a little bit less than the 115?
114.5.
114.5, good. Okay, what comes next?
119.5.
119.5? What?
124.5.
Good. And,
129.5.
all right, so those are all the numbers that would round up into the class. Okay. All right, so now let's look at the other side. Okay, so remember that these numbers, we want to go a little bit more. Okay,
So
just,
you 105.5?
well, that's a little bit too much. So what would your up? 104.5. Okay, we're going just a little bit up and ending in a 0.5. All right, so 104.5, and then what?
109.5.
Yeah, and these are a little bit easier because all we're really doing is tacking on that 0.5 onto the number that we already have, right? Okay, so 114.5. Yeah, and all the numbers in between will take care of themselves. So we're basically just building boundaries along the edges of our classes. A little bit less, a little bit more. All right, any questions with that? Okay, what's frequency? What did we do for the other one when it came time for frequency? We did what? We counted, so we're gonna do the same thing here, we're gonna count. All right, so let me find the things. Okay,
So do you count how many from 100 to 104 or 99.5 to 104?
either way, but it would be easier to use the whole numbers.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna count anything between 100 and 104. So you guys are probably gonna have to help me with this as I go, because I'm liking this stuff. All right, so there's the 100. The 104, let's see,
It's another 100.
is there another 100?
The last column, the third one down.
Yep, okay.
And then 104 is at the bottom.
104 is at the bottom. All right, so there's 3 numbers. Anybody see anything else? 100 to 104?
I think that's it.
That's it. The good thing is, at the end, if we have something that we have marked off, we'll know to go back and put it where it belongs. Okay? All right, so now I'm gonna count numbers between 105 and 109. So there's 1, 2, 3,
109 was above that.
4, 5, 6, 7,
It's the fourth row and it's between 108 and 110.
8, 9, 10. All right, is that all of those?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so 10 right here. All right, 110 to 114. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Anything else?
It's a 114 right there.
The second column at the bottom.
15. Look like it?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so 15. All right, 115 to 119. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All of those. Okay. All right, 120 to 124. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so 7 there. All right, 125 to 129. This one. 2. Okay, and then the 134. Okay, so now I'm gonna check and make sure that everything is marked off. All right, which I think I've got everything marked off. All right, I'm gonna add up that column just as a second check to make sure. Okay, 13, 28, 47, 48, 49, 50. All right, and make sure that that makes sense over here. So we have coming down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And going across, we have 5. 5 times 10 is 50. That looks good. Okay. All right, any problems with the counting? Okay, so the only thing we have left is cumulative frequency. All right, so cumulative frequency is going to be sort of like a running total, all right? So in the first row, your cumulative frequency is always going to match your frequency. So if frequency is 3, cumulative frequency is 3. Those two numbers should be the same as you get started. Okay. All right, now remember, running total. So I've got 3 numbers. When I move to the next class, I'm picking up 10 more, which makes the total what? 13. Okay, when I go to the next class, I'm picking up 15 more,
28.
which makes the total 28. Then I pick up 12 more,
40.
it gives me 40. All right. So 40. All right, pick up 7 more, gives me 47. 2 more,
49.
49. 1 more,
50.
50. Okay, and that should finish up our chart.